So what are Africanisms? The term Africanism refers to a theoretical connection between the characteristics of Black American cultural practices and those of the mainland, typically West African, cultures. Through the forced migration of enslaved Africans to the Americas, many West African cultural practices, most importantly music and dance, were core elements in the development of early Black American culture. The most prominent characteristics of said elements include call and response, which is the back and forth interaction between vocals and or instruments, modification of timbre, the growling vocals or trumpet sounds, for example, the use of blue notes, notes in which pitch slides or is expressively bent, and the integration of music and movement, also known as dance. Over time, due to systematic oppression of these practices, in order to enforce cultural assimilation, as well as proximity to other diverse cultures later on, many of these core elements were lost in favor of new, hybrid culture that emerged in its wake. Out of necessity, Black Americans curated a culture for themselves that now permeates Western popular culture at large. From fashion to colloquialisms, Black American influence is reflected in every aspect you can think of. Most familiar is the influence displayed in music. I use the term Africanism to help one understand the complex nuances of the musical characteristics from West African cultures that survived in Black American music, and as a result, every other genre. Additionally, with the digital era that makes accessibility to Black American culture one TikTok video or viral meme away, we find that Black Americanism has crossed over into spaces we could never imagine 100 years ago, most interestingly, in South Korean popular music. Now, there's very complex history surrounding the relationship between K-pop and Black American culture, but that's an entirely different conversation I don't want to elaborate on at this current moment. All that needs to be said is that there's a very fine line between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation that the K-pop industry at large still fails to not cross. Very rarely will you see a K-pop group or idol take interest in another culture in a respectful way. At worst times, it's completely dehumanizing. At best, it's just outrightly distasteful. Having been in the K-pop community for half a decade, I've seen many instances of cultural appropriation, and I honestly believe that it has become a marketing tactic to gain engagement through outrage. These companies know that it's much easier to take whatever they want from differing cultures than it is to actually educate itself about them. Knowing this, I had little to no expectations of a K-pop group ever accurately appreciating any of the multiple cultures within the African diaspora, until BTS released Idol in late 2018. At first, I admit, I was skeptical. Though I had faith in BTS's intentions, there was a lingering sense of hesitancy when articles describing the song came out. As I mentioned before, there's a very fine line between appreciation and appropriation, and I had hoped that BTS were cognizant and responsible enough to know the difference. However, all my fears vanished once more information of the song, and eventually the music video came out. Not only did BTS and their company Big Hit thoroughly research the cultures they were drawing inspiration from, they explicitly explained in the press release exactly what genre, Guam, and cultural dance, Gwar Gwar, that they used. During promotional tours, they were adamant to inform whoever was watching that no, this isn't the idol dance, it's the Gwar Gwar.
Okay, what is...
To me, what set their attempt apart from others was the fact that they did not parade these cultural elements as a costume or a new toy to play with. They presented them as respected treasures of one culture alongside treasures of their own. They proved that it was possible to partake in other cultures without bastardizing or blatantly disrespecting them. I was thoroughly impressed with the way that they went about handling that comeback, and I had hoped that they would eventually do something similar with another culture again soon. However, BTS have stated before that they do not often revisit concepts or ideas, so I was content with only ever experiencing that level of cultural appreciation with Idol. That is, until ON was released early 2020. As many know, BTS's affinity for hip-hop was the core of their inception as a musical act. Throughout their career, they made a point of acknowledging the source of their inspiration through song, interviews, and more.
You listen to American artists, who do you love?
A$AP Rocky,
Pharrell,
Usher,
Chris Brown,
Jay-Z, Drake, Nas, Eminem,
Tori Kelly,
Bruno Mars,
Kanye West.
Kanye.
Daniel Sugar.
Though in the beginning they had a less than tasteful approach to partaking in Black American culture, to me it was evident their intentions were never that of blatant disrespect. After much consideration, I personally chose to wait and see what they would do, and change, if given the opportunity to re-educate themselves and reevaluate their understanding of Black American culture. Fortunately, ON showed just how far they've come from their initial approach to Black American practices up until now. ON, as a song, is a triumphant anthem meant to encourage even the weakest parts of ourselves to keep going in the face of internal and external adversity. But as a piece of art in its entirety, it's much more than that. ON is a culmination of all the resilient parts of early Black American cultural practices, or as I mentioned earlier, Africanisms. When listening to the song, it begins with the sound of an organ and the claps and shouts from a choir. Now, these elements are directly taken from Black American gospel practices with their roots in slavery.
Put your hands together, come on. Everybody say, feel me. Rain down. Can we take it up here? Can we take it up? Here we go. Turn up. Come on. So Roberts, can you help me?
Even before the label gospel was attached to the music created and performed within Black Christian churches, early Black Americans used their praise and worship time as a safe haven from, or a coping mechanism for, their reality. And a lot of the Black American community still does to this day. BTS not only incorporated these elements in their art to interpret in their own way, while still maintaining true to the central message, but they also made sure to employ people directly from this community to participate in this reinterpretation. As seen in their own commentary film, the all-black choir was an essential element in the track instrumental and accompanying vocals in not just ON, but other tracks from Map of the Soul 7, like Friends and Outro Ego.
That's my ego, that's my ego.
Again together.
Map of the soul, map of the all. That's my ego, that's my ego.
Staying on the topic of the choir, during the chorus of ON, there was a call and response happening between them and BTS. The AO in between the lines BTS sing serve as responses to the call BTS give. In addition to the incorporation of call and response, there's a brief display of the use of a blue note. During Aron's part, he sings the line, "Look at my feet," and there's a background vocal singing down down that slides down a pitch. It's simple, but it still serves its purpose as a nod to Africanism. There's also the modification of timbre, displayed through the use of the UCLA Bruin Marching Band, led by the Black conductor and music director, Dwayne Benjamin. With this addition of marching band, BTS tapped into one of the more underrepresented aspects of Black American culture, the HBCU, or historically Black colleges and universities, marching band style. While the marching band's history transcends a single culture, HBCU marching bands are the fruit of a very long and interesting history of Black marching bands that began in the military. Brass instruments became a staple of military bands by the 1860s, and all Black regiments of the Union Army had their own brass band. Having bands allowed regiments to recruit through public appearances such as parades. As a result, Black minstrel troops were also on the rise, helping to circulate Black styles of music and dance through said public events. After the war, many of these Black regiments were left with musical skills that they wanted to master. However, because many young Black Americans couldn't receive musical education, these self-taught Black bands had to create their own rules and guidelines. Their music possessed new elements of syncopation, call and response, polyrhythms, and melodies. Today, HBCU marching bands are known for their high-energy showmanship by incorporating popular R&B and hip-hop characteristics, as well as dance, into their intricate routines. Now, BTS aren't the first to include HBCU marching band elements in their work. Regardless, BTS, during the extended version performance of On during the 2020 Mama Award show, made sure that their intentions and inspirations were very clear. During the break of the performance, BTS paid their respects in many ways. First, when the dance break starts, Jimin comes to the front with the staff, acting in the part of a HBCU drum major. This role evolved from the leader of Black minstrel troops, who were performers themselves. This position is typically used to control the tempo and field direction of the band. Then, as the break progresses, you find Hosik surrounded by band members doing a dance known as crumping. Arising in the late 1990s and early 2000s, crumping began as a channel of protest art through dance that helped breathe life back into Black communities after the Rodney King riots. Developed by Rodty, also known as Big Miho, in the dance community, crump can be characterized by seemingly wild, uncontrollable body movement, flailing limbs, and aggressive, hard-hitting jabs and stomping. Though on the milder side, Hosik's performance of crumping pays respect to the Black art forms and creatives that made his love for dance possible. Finally, once Taehyung, Jimin, and Hosik gather back together to do their part of the dance break, you will notice that there is a brief nod to another dance form known as stepping. Dating back to the early 20th century, stepping has its origins in the return of Black American veterans of World War I enrolling into colleges. Inspired by their military training, they brought back the drill-like elements from the military and combined it with Africanisms, such as incorporating music and movement from their culture. Stepping involves syncopated clapping, slapping of hands against various body parts, and foot stomping. Though only done for a short period of time, all three members of BTS pay homage to the art form. It saddens me that many people are unaware of how far BTS went to honor my people and our culture, but overall, I'm glad that they did this. Too often, Black American culture is being cherry-picked by non-Black individuals to cosplay in, continuously exploiting and appropriating us for their own gain. However, seeing this level of respect for my culture, and the platform Black artistic expression was given through this comeback, brought a smile to my face. Don't misunderstand, I don't need BTS to validate my Blackness or to love my culture, and nothing they did was particularly groundbreaking, but witnessing this brought me joy. Seeing my culture be appreciated to this extent, being researched and understood, made me happy, and I'm grateful for that.